Hey everybody, this is A7X Fan Ben with another video. This is about how to change up your games if you ever get sick of like a standard 40-point 1v1 format and things like that. I've played Pirates a lot, so I don't always get sick of the more basic games, but I do like to change things up often. So if you play a lot or you plan to play a lot in the future, this could be a good video to see. And just in general, if you're looking for like alternative play styles and things like that. So back in 2014, I started a thread called Game Ideas on miniature trading, and that's what you're looking at right now. So I'm just going to go through a decent amount of the stuff here. Most of these are not mine, but I gave credit to the people and to the original users and creators in parentheses. And so yeah, we'll just jump into it. I made different headings for the thread, so we'll start with scenarios. So there is a big scenario document. I'm going to pull that up right now too and just kind of peek at the ones I've tried. But it has, I think it's like almost 60 pages long, the original. It has a ton of different scenarios. Captain Mike's Monopoly variant is in there. I think it's called Monopol R. And then there's a bunch of other ones like Treasure Island and a lot of interesting scenarios. So yeah, I'm looking, okay, the PDF doc is 46 pages on my computer. Then I'll go to the next one here. There's a few scenarios on Captain Mike's website that are not in the scenario document. And then there's actually something called the Adventure Book, which some people probably don't know about. It's extremely rare. There's only one copy known to exist. A former member at Miniature Trading won it on eBay for only about 53 bucks, I think. I remember back in like 2011. And she made a thread about it. So there's all the scenarios are in this thread here, and then Wolf was kind enough to release the stats for the unique ships and crew used in the adventure book. So then there's different scenarios you can use from that. So these are actual WizKid scenarios, which is pretty cool. And like I said, people might not know about it because it's from 2011 when the scenarios were released, and then it just doesn't get talked about much, even though it's as rare as the ships in a bottle, as far as we know. And then, yeah, looking at the scenario list, Bermuda Triangle, the Colonists of Catan, and then there's a bunch of decent ones. I haven't tried most of these. I know I've done the Isles of El Dorado is basically just a basic cumulative game. I'm going through the PDF scenario document right now. And then there's a few other ones that I've played. Paradise Island is pretty cool. And then the Other Worlds game is one I've done a couple times. There's basically, in the Other World from the PDF scenario doc, the first link, you basically have a table, and then you have a second table, and you can only get to the second one where the gold is through whirlpools. And then you could even expand it and do like 3 or 4 tables. So if you have a pretty good gaming space or multiple tables in the room where you usually play Pirates, Other Worlds is a good one to try out. One thing I will warn about that one though is that both times I've tried it, we put the home islands on the same table, and then my opponents didn't want to brave the whirlpools on the way to the golden back, so they tried to blockade my home island. But blockading is not a very good strategy at all. So I was able to beat them easily in both of those games. So basically, if you do the Other World scenario, I would recommend not putting home islands in the same ocean, or if you do, put at least one wild island on that table as well. And then you can actually, and then the fourth one here, you can actually go back to the old WizKids website through the archive.org, and then look at old WizKids scenarios, which is pretty cool. So Wolf was the one that kind of introduced me to the archive.org. It says September 22nd, 2008. And then you can see the old WizKids site, which I never really knew about until after it was gone, because I didn't get back into Pirates until basically 2011 when I discovered the online community. But there's a lot of different things here, and then you've got some scenarios there. Wreck of the Black Galleon, I think that's the one I've heard about a lot. It's more famous, I guess. And then Captain Vendari has some scenarios on his fan site. Defense of St. Helens is one I've done. This one has hosted a picture at Divine Art, and it's a pretty cool one. it's a good deathmatch scenario. Basically, you have two sides, and so there's basically a 3-on-2 matchup. So you might, and it's a 3-to-2 ratio for the fleet sizes. So you basically have like 150 points for the attackers versus 100 points for the defenders. And then defenders get some forts too, and then the icebergs act as the gates. I did this in a 500-point game with 5 fleets, so there were like 2,500 points total. So it's the biggest deathmatch I've ever done. It was good. I would recommend a little bit smaller than that, just because there were so many ships that it was mostly just rolling dice for a long time. But it was still pretty cool, and it came down to the wire. The attackers won on the 14th turn, and there's only, if the defenders can defend this final gate on the left for at least 15 total turns, the defenders win, or else the attackers do if they get it earlier. So that's a good scenario if you like death matches. So Defense of St. Helens is pretty cool. Circle of Blood, this one is cool. Riz the Bloody Riz, one of the better members of the community for a while. And he came up with this scenario. It's basically you have islands on the outside, and then the fleets aren't all in one space. So the red and yellow, those represent the fleet location. So your fleet is scattered, and then the first island that you explore becomes your home island. So it's pretty cool. And then the orange in the middle here are also wild islands, but you can optionally put forts on them. And then the green is terrain. So then you can have reefs and things like that. And then the white are neutral sea creatures. So these are like NPC sea monsters that go and attack players if they're close by. So it's a pretty cool scenario. I've played it only once so far, I think. Actually twice, because I played it on Vassal too. And it's pretty fun. So I would definitely recommend that one. And then Waterworld is one of my absolute favorites, actually. Gotta get some of these tabs out. Waterworld is from Brett P45. That's a scenario that his game group often plays. So essentially, there's no home islands, only floating forts that can be sunk. And then once all the treasure from a wild island is loaded, once it's gone, the wild island sinks. So the total number of islands decreases as you go along, and then the game immediately ends when there's no more dry ground. So if you have to keep the gold in your ships or in your friendly fort. So, and then you can steal gold from the fort as if it's a home island with home island raiders. So this is a pretty awesome one. This is one of my absolute favorites to play. I've played it a handful of times, not so much in bigger games yet. I did play a 200-point Waterworld game against Xerix, which was really fun. That's still to this day probably maybe the most perfect game I've played, because everything went well for me somehow. I got lucky, at least to some extent. But Waterworld is really cool. That's one of my all-time favorites, so I would highly recommend that one. And then the ones underneath here I haven't really done, so I can't really say too much about it. And some of these are really old too, not all of them, but some of these are from Board Game Geek back when the game was still in production. I'll just take a peek at this one real quick and see. Yeah, this one's from 2007. I think at least one of them from like 2006 or 5. So, and then yeah, there's a race scenario with Bootstrap Bill came up with, which was pretty cool. That's one I've been meaning to try sometime too, but haven't done that one yet. And although I've played a lot of games, there's so much in the game ideas thread that I haven't. It's gonna take me many years if I ever get to try them all, which I probably won't, but I'd like to. So yeah, basically the race scenario from Bootstrap Bill submitted in 2012 on Pojo. So you have an obstacle course, and then you go around. And I think it would be pretty interesting in terms of like a chase scenario too for ships with captains and helmsmen. And my bow chasers custom equipment would probably come in handy for that. But as most people probably know already, campaign games are my absolute favorite type of game. So basically, the core concept is like a cumulative game where treasure spent as the game progresses, making the game bigger and bigger. So when you bring gold or alternatively resources back to your home island, you can spend it on new ships and crew. So then your fleet expands, and you go out and try to conquer the sea against your opponents. So I still have to edit this to make it say the Caribbean game. That's the world game is on hiatus due to technical problems, but the Caribbean game is the current campaign being played by Xerix and I. We're hoping that it's going to go for many years, and it's going to be hopefully the most epic game ever until the world game maybe surpasses someday if we can get that game off the ground. And the world game and the Caribbean game, the rule sets are almost identical. They take a lot of concepts from other games like Risk, a totally different board game, of course, and they also take inspiration from the next few. So that's a good segue into Economy Edition, which is from Cannon Fury. This one is basically, at this point, the most popular campaign game rule set there is. I've played it only once in a physical game, my 2015 game, but that kind of inspired Xerix to try it out as well. So he's done it like 2 or 3 times, because he did one economy game, then he's done a couple games of Century of Economy, which is a fusion of Century of the Empires and Economy Edition. So these are both somewhat complicated rule sets, but in terms of campaign games, it's pretty easy to get into once you've played Pirates a bunch of times. So the main thing with Economy Edition is the resource system. So you have 6 resources, so when you explore an island, you roll a die, and then that's the resource of that island. And then you have basically resource duration and value rolls to determine what value those resources are. So instead of having, gold be worth the same thing all game, you've got resources that change in value. So it's pretty interesting. I love this one. This was used in Vassal Campaign Game 3, which just finished up only a few weeks ago. And then it's being used, a modified version of it is in the works right now for Vassal Campaign Game 4, which will start this month or next month. So keep an eye out for that. We've got 5 players for CG4, and we're going to use Economy Edition. So you can check out the battle reports for that once we start. And yeah, Economy Edition has a ton of battle reports because Xerix and I have combined for, including CG3, probably 4 or 5, probably 5 or 6 games combined using the general Economy Edition rules. And then, like I said, Xerix now plays Century of Economy every summer in 2016-17, hopefully this year too. So that's a fusion of EE with Century of the Empires, which is from Sariario, from Pojo. And this was my first game that I ever took pictures for, was my 2013 edition of Century of the Empires. It's not quite as streamlined as Economy. There's a few things I changed too, but this is a really cool one. This one does use gold, but it has different rules for like island upgrades and like structures and whatnot than Economy Edition, along with a few other minor changes. So, and combining them into Century of the Economy is what Xerix likes to do. And then I did make a Risk variant rule set. This one was flawed mostly because in the future it would be best if army units could acquire gold or resources over land, not just ships. But I did play a big game in 2012 of the Risk cumulative game, and it was a really cool game actually. So, and that's partly where the idea for the world game started, is because I used the Risk game board for army units, and then I had each territory was represented by one island card in the ocean, which was separate from the Risk board because the Risk board wasn't nearly big enough to make to have for the Pirates CSG part of the game. So I did one island per territory, which is still tiny scale for the world, of course, but it worked decently well considering the space constraints I had. So, and yeah, and that's kind of morphed into the world game now, which we hope to start someday. So, which is going to be really epic. And then Vandari actually has a campaign rule set too. I haven't used this one, but we are using his shipyard rules for this, where when you buy a ship, instead of just having it appear immediately, it basically is given build actions. So it comes into the game with no masts, and then so to get a 4-master ready to sail, you have to spend 4 turns giving it build actions, almost like repairing, essentially. So yeah, this one, I think it's a pretty cool one too. I just haven't tried it out yet in a full game. And then Colonize the Caribbean from Louis XIV, Armada, and then general cumulative games, of course, as well. So, and then variant rule sets. I haven't used these as well. This is something I really want to try out. Wolf has a Pirates of Catan custom rule set, combining Pirates CSG with Settlers of Catan. And then So you put a lot of work into that. That's one I want to try. I don't know how to place that out of Catan yet, but hopefully I'll learn someday. Headers, and then these, basically all these, I've looked at these. I don't remember them specifically, but they all sounded pretty interesting. So I definitely would like to try them sometime. So a lot of these are hosted at Board Game Geek, where you can download the file. So, and then another way to change up your games is to use custom game pieces. So you may be a custom creator yourself, or you might be interested in creating your own pieces. There is a custom ships thread at Miniature Trading, and we also have an organized version thread once you have a bunch and want to put them all in the same post. So custom ships number 2 has begun. I'm in the process of doing a historical set. I'm trying to submit one custom every day. Like Henry Jennings was an infamous pirate in real life, so I made a crew based on his real life exploits and whatnot. But anyway, so custom sets are a good way to change up your games as well. There's obviously a lot of custom sets. I think I have them all listed here. If not, let me know. But I think these are all the ones I could find. So, and I think, yeah, I have to update these links too. So I think, actually, yeah, I don't have Xerxes either. So yeah, I'll have to update that today. And then after custom sets, I just have a ton of ideas kind of listed in random order. Captain Mike has random setup tables. So you basically roll a die and then follow the table to see what your setup is. So like, let's say you got like a 5, you go to special setup 1, and then you roll a 5. Free ships totaling 12 mass, roll on special crew. So in that case, it would be pretty interesting because without a point limit, you would be more inclined to use expensive ships than usual. So you could use a 3-master that costs 18 points that you normally wouldn't use in a 40-point game, for example. And then on special crew, you might get 4 generic crew, 1 name crew, all free. In which case, cargo masters and tribal chieftains are generic crew. So you want to take advantage of that. But yeah, the random setup tables are pretty cool. I've used them a handful of times, and they're quite fun. So I definitely recommend those. Captain Mike is legendary in the community, of course, and he has a lot of good ideas on this stuff. And then this is a thread submitted by Lord Denton in 2013, yeah. And so this one just has some different ideas on return fire and stuff like that. So it's a cool thread to look through. And then I just linked a bunch of different threads that are interesting. Another way to change up your games is to change what you use. That's one of the favorite things I do, and Wolf does as well. We don't like to use the same ships every time, so we change it up often. One exception for me would be like tournaments, but that's when you're doing a bracket and have to see which fleet is better than the other. But there's a huge fleet section at Miniature Trading. I think we've got over 1,100 now. Let me just peek at it real quick. But yeah, I like to use different fleets. I've submitted about over, I think 112 or something as of this video on Miniature Trading. Yeah, oh, okay, so there's over 1,400. There's 1,441 fleets at Miniature Trading. So if you're ever in the need to change it up, you could find a cool fleet. And they have different voting, vote scores and whatnot. And then you can sort, which is really cool. So if you need a 50-point fleet, you can just do 50 to 50, and then let's say you just want 50 to 50. You can even search for a specific game piece. So you could search for like the Kraken or something and see if there's a fleet using it. So, and then here's all the different 50-point fleets. So there you go. So then you can pick one of those. There's 65 to look through. And then, yeah, pick your favorite game pieces, use them for fun, miniature reviews. Return to Savage Shores, that's another good one. Even if you don't really want to make physical versions of the Return to Savage Shores pieces like Cannon Fury partially did, this would be a good idea. I've used a lot of different RTSS stuff in Vassal, and that's another thing. How to change your games up is a virtual game experience with the Vassal module, which I've talked about extensively, of course, and you'll see more from me on that, as always. And then different build totals is maybe the most obvious one. If you have time, 500-point games, I've liked those a lot. The first one I did was one of my favorite games I've ever played. 300 points, 100-point death matches is fun because it's still a reasonable build total, but it allows you to have a decent amount of deadly stuff in your fleet as opposed to just 40 points. And then yeah, tournaments are cool. Oh, this is a good one. This kind of ties into what I said earlier, but make fleets only using only game pieces that you've never used before, which is cool. It really forces you to change things up quite a lot. And maybe by extension use named crew you haven't used before too. So and then yeah, vary the playing area. One of my favorite things to do is make islands closer than they're supposed to be. So the standard rules call for 3L at a minimum, but it's usually, the game is usually more fun if you make them closer than that. So 2L or only 1L maybe can make the game really fast paced and exciting. And it also decreases how important speed is, which can be a good thing just because a lot of the most overpowered ships in the game, like the Banshee's Cry, a lot of them are that good because of their speed. So if you make the islands closer together, some of the slower ships that aren't usually as good can shine more, which is cool. And then there's some other different, these are just kind of different things I've listed at the end here. It's not really scenarios, but like this one, this would mess with the rules a lot, but you basically, every ship in play from all players is given their move action or whatever, and then shooting is like another turn sort of, so it's like different phases of the turn. And then wind rules, that's something I've used, I think, twice maybe, something like that. I used it in the experimental cumulative game, and it was pretty cool. It's definitely one of the biggest house rules that makes historical sense, because a lot of people complain about the lack of wind and return fire, maybe the two most sought after changes in terms of house rules, or what WizKids arguably did wrong. And then there's a few more down here. And then the water world, I have to give credit to Brett B45, but the water world inspired me to think of other things. I did this only once so far, but fog home islands. So you can only, you basically don't have a home island, but once you go into a fog bank, that is your home island, and you can unload gold there. And then home island raiders would like exit the fog in random directions, and then like you could do rolling fog, and then your home island fog bank is moving around, so it's pretty cool. One home island for all fleets, that's one that I'm pretty interested in. And then I did this one time, kind of an interesting battle report on it. There's no open ocean, so the sea is completely terrain. So every move action, you're hitting reefs, fog banks, Sargasso seas, whirlpools, icebergs are moving on top of Sargasso seas. So it's pretty crazy. You need a lot of terrain to make it work, so you need like dozens of pieces. The setup takes a while, but it is a really out there kind of wild idea. I've done it once, and it was pretty fun, kind of amusing. And then this one is interesting. Every ship automatically has a home island raiding ability. That one I like because home island raiders are usually not a great strategy. It's tough to win with them, but and then all gold starts on home islands. This is an idea I got from Board Game Geek. Well, it's not my idea in the first place, but basically there's no wild islands with gold. It all just starts on the home island, and this would be a good one to combine with home island raiders. So you basically are forced to go steal from other people instead of just exploring it, so it kind of provokes more combat. So, and then one of my favorites is this one is about prize value, which I thought was a cool idea. This was originally posted a while back in 2009. And then kind of by extension, I like to do, I haven't done it nearly enough playtesting wise, but I love the idea of points in play plus gold for the win. So basically, instead of just whoever has the most gold at the end wins, you would add the gold scores to how many points you have left at the end of the game, and then whoever has the most total at that point wins. So I've only done that, I think, once or twice so far, but it's one of my favorite house rules to think about. So I definitely want to try that out more. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and hopefully you'll change your games up and do something different sometime. And clearly there's tons of ideas, so you'll never really run out. I've played Pirates over 400 times, and I still haven't done most of these, basically. So, and then the question of the day is, what idea from this video and from this thread would you most like to try out? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.